speech is titled The Name Game.
Thank you. Here in the USA, we're pretty dull when it comes to naming groups of animals. We say a herd of this, a pack of that, and maybe a flock of those. But in Africa, they're very descriptive in their group names for different animals. So today I'm going to give you some of these real descriptive animal names. I'm going to talk about the animals at our Cheyenne Mountain Zoo in the Africa exhibit. And I want to encourage you to come out to the zoo. It's a nice walk on the side of the mountain, and you get to see lots of wonderful exotic animals. And to further encourage you, I get 2 free guests with my membership every time I go. So if you want to come on out with me, I can get you into the zoo, and we can either walk and talk, or you can just go off by yourself and see some great animals. Now, the most iconic animal at our Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, of course, is the giraffe. Now, in Africa, when the giraffe are feeding in the tops of the trees, they eat those acacia leaves, they're called a tower. Then when they start to walk out with those big long legs, the guides call them a stride of giraffe. And then when they really take off, they're called a gallop of giraffe. Just past our giraffe at the zoo, we have this wonderful exhibit of meerkats. Now, a group of meerkats is called a mob. You know, like the mobsters and the gangsters. They're a social mammal. They have an alpha pair, and all of the members of the family are offspring of this alpha pair. So can't you just hear that father meerkat, who's kind of like the godfather, when he gives out the assignments for jobs, saying to one of them, "Hey Guido, my boy, we need a guard, a protector. You are in charge." So little Guido Meerkat goes to the highest place he can find, and he becomes the meerkat guard. Now, the biggest predator for meerkats are the birds of prey. So Guido's looking for those birds of prey. In the desert where these meerkats live, there's not many trees and rocks and boulders. The highest place is usually a termite mound. Now, termites are great invertebrate animals. We don't have a display of them at the zoo right now, but termites are all over the world, and they eat wood. They can actually digest that cellulose, the outer woody part of wood, and return the nutrients to the soil. Termites live in colonies. They colonize everywhere. Fun fact, if you rounded up every termite on Earth today, you got them all together, put them on a scale, they would weigh more than all the humans on Earth. Now, past the meerkat exhibit, we have a great exhibit of big cats, African lions. Now, if you look at the lions, they walk around very stately. And they are the only large cats that live in a family group. That male has a big black mane. He keeps that tail with the tail bob up in the air, swishing. Their family group name is a pride. Right past the lions, we have the lion's favorite food, which are zebra. Now, the black and white zebra stripes don't really look like camouflage, because we think camouflage means blending into your environment, but it is a type of camouflage called disruptive camouflage. If you have a herd of zebra, like zebra here and here and here and here and everywhere, when they begin to run, they disrupt the predator's eyesight. So the ones that get eaten are the slower ones, old ones, the babies, and those that are injured. A group of zebra is called a dazzle, and it razzle-dazzles the predators. Up past the zebra are some colobus monkeys. Now, a whole group of monkeys is called a troop. Do you remember that old TV show called F Troop?
Oh, yeah.
It was about the cavalry, and these guys were kind of running around and flying here and flying there, just like our monkeys who brachiate and swing through the trees. Up past the monkeys, we go to the top of our African exhibit, and we have some really wonderful pachyderms. The pachyderms are thick-skinned mammals, and we have the largest land mammal on Earth. That would be that big elephant with its huge trunk. Now in Africa, sometimes they call a group of elephants a parade. That's because they're walking trunk to tail and trunk to tail. You'll never see that at our zoo because we only have 6 older females and they're not going to do a parade for anybody. I was fortunate to see a parade of elephants once in Africa. It was on a safari Serengeti, on a safari in the Serengeti. One afternoon we had gotten in the jeeps to go over to one of the soda lakes where there's that iconic bird, the flamingo. We saw this incredible group of flamingos, and as we drove on up the beach of the soda lake, they began to fly away, and our guide said, "That's a fandango of flamingos." And as we got past them, on up towards a little rise, we saw a parade of elephants, trunk to tail. And our guide said, it's the dry season. These elephants are headed up to that riverbed, the dry riverbed, and they're probably going to dig water holes. But we don't have time. It's getting dark, and it gets dark really quickly in the Serengeti. It's going to get dark real soon, but in the morning we'll come and check it out. So the next morning we drove back on up past the soda lake and the fandango of flamingos, and we saw the dry riverbed. On up ahead, we saw where the elephants had dug a couple of water holes. Now, at this time of morning, about 12 hours after they had been dug, they weren't water holes anymore, they were mud baths. And we saw a family of hyena rolling in the mud and staying cool. So the hyenas are not dogs, they're not cats, they have their own family, and there's 4 different species of hyena. The ones we were looking at were spotted hyena, and they're often called the lapping hyena because they don't bark, they don't purr or meow or roar. They have a lapping sound. They make a really unique lapping sound. So a group or a family of hyenas is called a cackle. Now the last animal that I'm going to talk about this morning that we have up there in the African exhibit is this really great animal with a couple of big horns on its face, rhinoceros. Now our rhino is a northern black rhino. They don't live in a family group, they're solitary. But southern white rhinos live in a family group. And once on a safari in Kruger National Park, we saw some rhino. So our Jeep driver drove up a respectful distance, parked, turned the Jeep off, and we started to take photos, but all of a sudden a woman on the opposite side of the Jeep gave out a little bit of a yippee scream. We all turned and looked. There were 2 juvenile rhinos pawing the ground. They were getting ready to give us the horn, and I don't mean honk honk. And our Jeep driver cranked up the Jeep and extricated us from what could have been a disastrous situation. And the group name of rhinos is a crash. We almost got crashed by the rhinos before the crash could get back together. Wonderful descriptive names. It's great to see animals in the wild. When you come to the zoo, you contribute to conservation. Part of your entrance fee always goes into our conservation fund, and we send lots of people, money, and resources all over the world to protect animals in their habitats. In closing, I'd just like to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite Native American elders, Chief Seattle. Chief Seattle once said, "Without the beasts, man would die of a loneliness of the spirit. We are all connected."